Welcome everyone to the. This blew me away. It's May, the May edition of the Excel track of the Vancouver Power BI and Modern Excel User Group meetings. We have Steve Kraynak with us today, and I am super excited to have this actually happening. This is going to be cool. I know that Steve actually showed us some really cool stuff in the Microsoft Summit that they've been doing, and I know that. Some of, but I'm not going to say all of that information will get shared here today. So, we're into our kickoff right now. So I just want to say a big thanks to the sponsors, SkillWave, that makes this happen, organizes speakers, gets everything put together here, and my company Excel Guru, the publisher of our Monkey Tools software, are also a big sponsor and portion of the people that actually pull all this stuff together. One quick note that I want to throw out, because I don't actually have a full Monkey Tools slide today, but earlier this morning, I actually just published a brand new Monkey Tools feature where you can now actually export your data models various ways into CSV files. There will be a video that's going to be posted on my YouTube channel later on that sort of walks through and explains that. But just so you know, new Monkey Tools features out today, which is awesome. It's been the first time in a while. Our next meetups that we have coming up. We have Christian Angel is going to be coming back to join us in a couple of weeks to talk about using Power Query to write back to SQL Server. This is the second half of his presentation that he wasn't able to deliver in the first one because he ran out of time. So we're super excited to be having that one come back. Note that is a noon on the West Coast start time because Christian is based in Romania. Our next Excel track, we're excited to be bringing Melissa DeCorta with us. She is going to be doing a Power Query presentation on Power Query in the trenches. And I believe there might even be a Power BI tie-in on this one. Again, because Melissa is based in the Netherlands, we are going to be doing a noon on the West Coast, so 3 p.m. East Coast time start for that. So watch out for those. They are open for RSVPs. We're looking forward to seeing both of those. Don't forget that we have our Monkey Shorts free weekly Excel and Power BI training videos that are being hosted on the SkillWave YouTube channel. There's a new episode every week, and they're short 3-minute bites on just some quick efficiency tips that you can actually look at with Excel and Power BI. It's not too late to sign up for my Excel Fundamentals Bootcamp if you are interested in coach training on getting you or your team up to speed with Excel, working with things like formulas, getting people introduced to pivot tables and Power Query and data visualizations and things like that. So don't forget to check that out. The link here I will throw into the chat once Steve has actually got his presentation going. I'll throw all these links into the chat so you have access to them. But of course, they're also in the deck that's been uploaded to the meetup site. This video, as well as all of our other meetups, are all hosted at SkillWave's YouTube channel, and I will throw that link up there as well. And the last thing that I'm going to say before I make way for Steve here is if you would like to get involved, if you'd like to come and speak at the Vancouver Power BI User Group on either Excel or Power BI or something that ties the two together, like Power Apps or Flow, we would definitely love to have you. Just fill out this little speaker form and let us know. This is open 24/7, 365. So even if you're watching this on a YouTube replay, this link will still work. And we are currently looking for speakers into the summer. So definitely hit us up if you are interested in doing so. And on that note, Steve, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and make way for you and turn the platform over to you for today.
Sounds great. Just wait for my slide to come up there, and I guess I can skip over my introduction slide since you did it for me. So thanks for that.
Well, I don't know. I didn't really give you a huge intro. You can still say something about yourself. Yeah. I mean, I didn't tell people that we met when you first showed up at Microsoft. I think didn't you work on some other software that had something to do with Excel? That
I did. I can go into a little bit of that. So, but welcome everybody. This is give you an update about things we've done in Excel for Mac over the past year, and then some things that are coming soon. I'll introduce myself. So I'm Steve Kraynak. I'm a product manager on the Excel team. I've been on Excel since 2011. And as Ken mentioned, we met. I got brought into Microsoft as part of an acquisition, and the other company built an add-in for Excel. And so when I got the when I got to Microsoft, I was charged with integrating that into Excel. And if you've ever used the Inquire add-in or Spreadsheet Compare, that was the product. So that was the first thing I'd probably talk to Ken about. But anyway, the last 4 or so years, I've been focusing on Excel for Mac. So, feel free to shoot me any question you have about anything Excel Mac, and I'll be happy to answer it. So quick agenda, we're just going to talk a little bit about what we focus on the team that works on Excel for Mac. And then I'll go through all the recent improvements really like over the past year or so, and then talk about what's coming, and then we'll just have time for open discussion. So what do we work on in the Excel for Mac team? So it's basically these 3 things. So of course, there are feature gaps. If you don't know, there are feature gaps on Mac compared to the Windows platform. And that's one of the top requests we get or complaints we get from customers is that, hey, I'm paying the same money, but I'm trying to do whatever feature and it's not there on Mac. What am I paying for? When are you going to get me that? So we really focus on filling in those gaps. And I think starting in 2018, 2018 was our big year where we filled in a lot of big gaps, like, things like pivot charts weren't available before, and they were in co-authoring. And then what I'm going to talk about today are the things over the last year, but that's really been a focus for all those years. The other thing now is staying in sync with what's being done on the Windows platform. So years ago, the Excel for Mac and Excel for Windows were actually 2 separate code bases. So features would naturally get built and introduced to Windows, and then at some time later, the engineering team would have to rebuild them and introduce it to Mac. Well, now it's a synced code base, and both apps for Windows and Mac build out of the same system. So whenever features are developed, we really are insistent on building those features on Windows and Mac. If not at the exact same time, they'll be released relatively close to each other. In some cases, we actually release things sooner on Mac than we do on Windows. If you've seen the data from picture feature, that's on Mac and it's coming to Windows, but it's not there yet. And then we do have some Mac-specific innovation. The one I mentioned, we started out on Mac because there's integration between the Mac and the iPhone. And we knew that you could fire up your iPhone camera from your Mac. And we thought, okay, this is a good chance to use that technology and then do this data from picture thing. There are some other things where just if the platform allows you to do certain things, then we can innovate there. But not a huge focus, but we definitely do some of that. All right, so now let's just dive right into it. So what have we done recently? So first, touching on architecture and reliability. These are just some kind of fundamental things, but we improved SQL Server connections. So for years, Mac Excel had a third-party driver for ODBC connections and SQL Server connections, and we've switched to using a first-party driver. And part of that is for better security. So with this new driver, we support TLS 1.2, which is now pretty much required. It's been recommended for a few years, and the third-party drivers that we were using didn't support that. So now we support that. But in addition to having a first-party driver that Microsoft is in control of, it just gives us a better ability to maintain that going forward. It actually seems like a simple thing, but it was a lot of work. Probably, I don't know, I had a couple engineers working on that for probably about 9 months to get it right. Reliability is another big thing. So we have we've been working on reducing the rate of crashes for a long time, but really took a big focus on that in the last year. We have about a 20% reduction in the crash rate in that time. And I can say, as someone who reads feedback that people send in when they click the feedback button in the app, we do hear less and less about crashes being a problem. So in addition to reducing the crash rate, we also improved the way that the auto recovery mechanism works. So in the past, you had to go into the auto recovery settings and say you wanted to do an auto recovery save every so many minutes. It started at 10, and a lot of people just left it at 10. So then if you had a crash anytime within that 10 minutes, you could lose some work. And we've optimized it so it's just turned on by default, and it kind of sets its own timing sequence so that if your file is small and it saves very quickly, then the auto recovery saves are going to happen very frequently. So the chance of you losing any data is really small, even if there is a crash. We've worked really hard to support the new Apple processors. So initially, when the processors came out on the new Macs, we had to run in Rosetta mode if you wanted to use certain features, namely Power Query. In the past 7 or 8 months, I think, we've made Power Query run completely native on the M1 processor, so no more need to use Rosetta mode. And then we always spend time every year supporting the new Mac OS. Typically in October, they release a new OS, and there always is some kind of change that we need to factor in, whether it causes something to not work as it used to, or a new feature that we want to take advantage of. Just the amount of validation to make sure things are working properly. We spend a lot of time on that. All right, navigate. Okay. One of the things we did was we had the Excel and Office ready for the Mac OS Monterey when it was released to production. And just a note about the way the support goes for the Mac OSs. And Ken found this out, I heard recently. We support the current Mac OS release and the prior two. So whenever there's a new release, we'll drop one out of support. And that means that if you're running Office on that one, if you don't upgrade your Mac OS, you won't be able to get further Office updates. And now I know there are some devices who are falling out of support from Apple, so they can't be updated to the latest OS. So it's causing some frustration because people can't upgrade their Office, but it's just that's the policy is that we support the current and the latest two. So sorry for that if it's affecting you. All right, now into the actual features that we've been working on. One of the recent ones is the name manager. So you can see the screenshot at the top of this slide. This shows our previous name manager capability. It wasn't the name manager, it was just a defined name dialog. And it was pretty limited compared to what you had on Windows. So you had just one name at a time could be visible. So you have a list there, you could select one and see how it was set up. But you couldn't see the whole list. And like on Windows, you have the filter capability that wasn't there. And it was also really small and not resizable. So it just was a challenge to work with if you had a long formula in there. And especially now with the lambdas, if you have a lambda, typically it wouldn't fit in that tiny little space. So it just wasn't very workable. And we had lots of feedback about that. So in January, we released the name manager, which you can see there at the bottom. And it's basically got everything you can do on Windows. It's showing you more details in the list. So you can actually just scan down and see for the name what it refers to, and you don't have to click on each one. It's filterable, resizable. It has more space for editing. There's still the define name dialog itself, so you can edit in there and make it even bigger, and you can see and edit the comment for a name. Previously, you couldn't even edit or see the comment on Mac. And then we have the icon just to show you the difference between the types of names, whether it's a range or a table. And again, the single item dialog. Let's see. Okay, paste options. So this one, we had an interesting project last year where we looked at usage data between what people were doing on Mac versus Windows Excel. And we tried to see what actions people were doing that correlated with using the app more during a month than other features. One of the things we found, it was kind of a surprise, was that there are certain paste operations that people were doing more often in Windows, and we kind of didn't understand it. We took a close look, and I guess even on the team, none of us really recognized that there was a pretty big difference in the menu that pops up after you do a paste. So after you paste, you can see on the left there, the screenshot shows what the menu was like on Mac. And it only had those, 7 options. But on Windows, when you do a paste, you get the little menu of icons that show up, and it has a whole bunch more options, and those were missing on Mac. So we basically just aligned those, so now that all the paste options are the same on both platforms. So it seems like a small thing, but we want to have consistency, and it's just easier now. If people are switching between Windows and Mac, then they have a consistent experience. And this is the most recent one, actually. I'll show other things, but the Find All and the improved Find dialog was just released. And previously, the Find dialog wasn't, number one, it wasn't modal. So we heard a lot of complaints saying, hey, it's a pain because I can find a cell, then I have to close the dialog if I want to edit, and then open it up again if I want to move to the next one. And there was no Find All. So that was, just a major downside. So now it's basically just like what you have on Windows. It's non-modal, so you can find a cell and you can go edit and then come back and the Find dialog is still there and you can just keep using it. You can, of course, see the whole list of hits that you have by clicking Find All. And then we have the options where you can expand or collapse the dialog. So if you like to set the options about where to search and whether to look in formulas or values and those things, you can expand that and it'll stay expanded when you close and reopen the dialog, just like it does on Windows. All right. So we've had some performance improvements. See a question or a comment. Too bad we didn't default to expand the options. Yeah, that is a comment we've heard, and I don't know how to say how we decided to not do that, but comment taken, and I can pass that on to the folks that worked on that.
Maybe so we fix both, Steve.
Well, yeah, if we do it, we would definitely fix both. I can't guarantee. I think people may have felt that if we all of a sudden made it default and people weren't used to it, there could be some frustration and confusion. And as long as it's sticky, then that should solve the problem. But yeah, I can see that some people may not even realize to click on it and they may not know they have those options. All right, related to performance. So we definitely have been putting a lot of focus on improving the performance of Mac. One of the things that we've really focused on over the last year was improving the launch time. So we've gotten that down to less than 10 seconds on most devices, which is roughly 30% faster than we had before we started this whole project. The way we've done that is improving the loading time of certain modules of the app. So we've just kind of optimized like what really needs to load before it's usable, because some things can load after you can see and interact with the app. And then if you have a lot of add-ins or add-ins that take a long time, there's a progress bar that shows up and you can actually cancel out of that, which lets you get control faster. We've had this little filter improvement. So if you use Mac, you'll know that when you, or historically when you were going into a filter, every time you changed one of the filter selections, it would apply that immediately. So that's nice if you want to have or if you're working with a small data set. But if you have a lot of data, it can take some time to actually apply the filter. And if you want to do multiple filter selections, then you'd have to wait in between each one of them. So now we have this checkbox where you can uncheck auto apply, and then you can just set up your filter the way you want and hit apply filter, which is similar to the way it works on Windows. But that way it just avoids the waiting time as you're setting your different filter options. We have the preloading of cell format actions. So if you use Mac, and this is something I was frustrated about for years, was that if you like go into a spreadsheet and you just want to hit bold or hit a fill color on a cell, you'd get this beach ball while there's something loading. And now we preload some of the cell format actions, so you shouldn't see that beach ball anymore on the first use. It wasn't a problem, once you did bold on one cell, then it would be fast on the others, but now it should be fast even for the first use. The other thing, this is not really something that we did up to this point, but we've taken advantage of the new Apple M1 processor simply because it's there. We do have some additional work to make our calc speed just a lot faster, taking advantage of some of the architecture. That's not in this next video I'll show you, but I'll just kind of show you the power of the new Mac M1 processor. And then upcoming, just for next year, one of the things we're going to focus on is measuring the responsiveness of the UI and making sure that we find places where the UI isn't responsive. And we do that by measuring anything where the app is actually just waiting to do an update based on user input. And we'll find those, and then we can, once we find out where the waits are happening, then we can go in and improve those. All right, so hopefully this video will come through for you all. What I have here is just the same spreadsheet, and I ran this on one of my Windows laptops an old Mac Mini, and those both have Intel chips. And then on the right, you'll see my new MacBook with the Apple M1 Pro. And what this does is it's going to run a bunch of calculations over, it's just using VBA to run the calculations like 20 times. And then it measures the start and stop time of calculations, and it's going to fill up the chart. So you'll see on the right, it's going to just go much faster. Hopefully you can see that. So it's done once on the M1, it's done twice, done 3 times. And so it basically did about 4 times as fast as you see on the other devices. Now, it's probably not a super fair comparison because they were older devices, but still pretty powerful Intel Core i7s. All right. So some more minor things. So we've tended to really be filling in feature gaps over the years that were, big things a lot of people were complaining about. But we also look at all our feedback that we get. And whenever there's something even minor that somebody says, hey, I have this on Windows, I can't do it on Mac, why is that? We'll put it on our list, and we have a big list. And luckily, the items on that list are getting less impactful over time, but we're still trying to work through those. And this is one where in the past, this show values as option was not on the menu in Mac. So you could still set, like if you wanted to do a percent of column total on a pivot table in Mac, you could do that, but you had to go into the right dialog to be able to set it. Now you can just right click on the values that you want it to be on and choose that option directly. We've improved the font support, and this is primarily through the use of cloud fonts. So this is something that was introduced on Word and PowerPoint earlier than Excel, but now if you use a font in Excel and the person, if it's one of these cloud fonts, which you can see the icon next to the font name, then it will work on other people's devices. They don't need to have the font installed. It'll just download when it's needed on their device. And I think we're getting close to the end of the recent new stuff. So Power Query, this has been a journey. And if you follow any of the blogging about our Power Query, that's what we've called it, a journey on Mac Excel. So initially it started out where we could open a file that had a Power Query in it and refresh the query. And it was just certain types. I think it was just connections to text files and Excel files. Recently, we added the ability where you can actually create connections now, and those are just the local files. So you can choose an Excel file or a text file or CSV, and then you get a preview of the data. So if you have an Excel file with multiple sheets and tables, you can navigate and pick which one you want and then load that in. But the editor wasn't there until just, I think, about last week sometime. We've enabled the Power Query editor for insiders. So if you're getting the insider beta updates, then you should be able to see the Power Query editor, which is really cool. It basically has the same capability that you have on Windows. I think in some cases it actually has a little bit nicer interface. So I think there's some nice icons that are used there to indicate different things. And so hopefully you'll find that really nice to use. And it even includes the advanced editor with IntelliSense. So you can do your detailed editing as you wish. And if you'd like to know more about that, there was just a blog posted about this about a week and a half ago or a week ago. So if you go to insider.office.com and click on the link for blogs, to right now, today, this is the one at the very top of the list. So as new things get published, that'll move down, but please take a look at that.
Hey, Steve, I got a couple of questions that got posted on the meetup group, which I want to sort of bring in, and I think now is probably the most appropriate time. So
sure.
The first one was from Ron, and it is directly related to Power Query and being Power Query for Excel for Mac. And what Ron's discovered, of course, is that Power Query in Windows has approximately 50 connectors. Power BI has got over 150, and in Excel for Mac, he's got 9 or less. And I mean, I know why this is, but do you want to speak to what's actually happening in that area?
I will. Yeah, I have a slide about that.
Okay. Cool.
So
Well, let's put that one across for this until you get there.
yeah,
Then, and the next question was one that was posted by Henry, and this one I think is sort of a little bit more global. But what Henry's asking is just to whether you can shed any light or help understand what the underlying drivers are for the big differences between things like Excel for Mac, Excel for Windows, Excel for Web, and Power BI Desktop. Is this like, are they purely driven by technical differences in operating systems? Are they driven by business decisions to maintain different models for different audiences or things like that? Why are there such big feature gaps between these different pieces on different platforms?
yeah. Oh, wow, that's a great question. That's a big one. So I'll say a lot of it is technical. So I think the differences between Excel for Windows and Excel for the web, that's really primarily just due to technical things. And, building an app that can work on the web, it's a completely different platform. So, it started years ago where we had Excel services, and then that turned into the Excel web app. Now it's Excel for the web. That's primarily just due to the different technology at use. And we realize that people want to be able to use the web app, or we want people to use the web app too, and they're not going to use it until have all the features that they want. So that's really at the core of it, though. I think it's just technical differences. When it comes to mobile, it's kind of the same thing. I think the mobile operating systems and the size of the devices that and the way that you can interact with them is just totally different than the desktop. So those are technical differences in some cases where the power of the device may not support doing something like Power Pivot, but also the way that you interact has got to be completely different. So through the development of those, like for the mobile apps, the focus was on getting the basics and making it something that people could interact with and use properly, and realizing that some of the more advanced things are just not a scenario that was super important on a mobile device. Now, as time goes on, more and more scenarios are becoming important on all devices. So we're working on that, but basically those were technical differences. As far as the Mac goes, obviously there are technical differences between the platforms that contribute to it. I think the differences we see today between Mac and Windows have a lot to do with the history of the organization, unfortunately. As I mentioned, there were two different code bases at use, and that contributed a lot to it because we had, there were different engineers working on each one. There were, when the feature was built for Windows, then it would get thrown over to the team that worked on Mac, and it may get a little bit of a redesign because people want it to feel more like a Mac app. And, so certain things would get changed a bit, which is okay. But then, some things they would just say, oh, that we don't have time for that, or, for whatever reason, some features may not have gotten built. Now, that's why in 2018, we combined the code bases and tried to get things so, they're really pretty much at par with each other. Unfortunately, on Mac, there was still, a lag because there was just UI that needed to be built that didn't exist on Mac. And, a lot of the code that's shared between Mac and Windows is not the user interface. It's underneath that. So like the name manager dialog had to be built on Mac. It's not Windows code running on Mac. So that's why some of those differences are there. There are some other like deeper technical reasons for things like Power Pivot. I know Power Pivot uses the analysis services engine, and there are some Windows APIs that are being used there, and those are just not available on Mac. And I guess it's technically possible that we could go and implement all the necessary components and get that running on Mac, but it's just such a huge effort. We haven't gone down that road at this time, but so that's the case of a technical difference. There are some what we call earned platform differences where there may just be a different type of interaction on Mac that's expected. So we would kind of change the user interface. Hopefully those are really not about features being available, but just the way you interact might be a little bit different. So I hope that explains some of it. I think if there were any,
I think it's a pretty comprehensive answer. I mean, it's both, right? But I mean, a lot of technical is behind it all, right? So, yeah, I keep hoping that one day you'll bring us Power Pivot on the Mac, and then at that point, I might actually have to invest in a new one. We'll see. All right. I think that's it for questions so far.
All right. So let me move on and talk about what's next. So this is subject to change. Some of this I was on the fence of whether I can show this publicly, but I think it's fine because I don't think we're showing any like groundbreaking new technology or anything like that. But I wanted to point out some of the things that we do have coming. You'll see on this one the little icon indicating this is an accessibility thing. So on Mac, you can save documents, of course, as PDF, but it doesn't include some of the accessibility tags. So if you've set up a document to make it accessible, and then you print it or save it to PDF, you want it to also be accessible as a PDF. It's a platform limitation right now that you can't, it just doesn't work on Mac. So what we're doing is connecting to an online service that we run, and it lets you choose save as PDF and then choose this one that's best for electronic distribution. And that will send your document up to our M365 service. It'll convert it to PDF and give you that back. So from your standpoint, it's super fast. So hopefully you wouldn't even realize that it's using a service. Now, if you have a really big document and a slow connection, of course, you might feel that, but this will give you just a more accessible result. So that's coming soon. Now, Power Query, there was a question about more data sources. This slide, I did take out the screenshot I have, but there are plans, and like I have on my computer, I forget the total number. I think we're over 30 different data sources that are on my Mac today. So those are in development. I didn't want to show it just in case things change that, you know, we don't want to say we're doing something and then not follow through with it. But those more data sources are coming. I think a big focus recently has been on getting the editor to work. And I'm sure there'll be some stabilization period for that one. But once that happens, then really the focus is going to be on getting more data sources available. So I think, Ron, you're asking, will we have support for PDF? I believe so, but I believe so, but I don't know for 100% sure. Another accessibility one is key tips. So this is a big one that we've heard requests for, and I guess primarily Excel users must be much bigger users of key tips than on Word and PowerPoint, because this is a feature that's being developed by what we call the shared team in Microsoft. It's not like the Excel team doesn't have to build this capability. We just have to make sure that all of our commands have their keystrokes that that make sense, or hopefully they're consistent with the way it works on Windows. But anyway, we on the Excel team have been pushing this for years, saying we really need key tips. We really need key tips. We're getting close. This is an actual screenshot. It's not just a mock-up. So I have this running on my computer, and I'm hopeful that it'll happen in the next, I don't know, 3 to 6 months. But we'll see, because this one has been planned for a while, and it's been it gets delayed now and then for a variety of reasons. But anyway, that's coming, and again, another accessibility feature as well. A really kind of minor one, but important, is the chart options. So on Mac right now, you don't have the option where you can control what happens to NA. So if you have a cell with NA in it, I think it defaults to showing $NAs as an empty cell, but you don't have control over it on Mac. Like the part on the screenshot on the right is from Windows. So we're just adding that little checkbox to the Mac. Another one coming soon is the resizable conditional formatting rules. So about a year ago, we introduced the resizable CF manager on Windows, but it didn't work that way on Mac, and we're working on that one currently. This is an example where we kind of got out of step. So even though I said we try to have all the features now in sync between Mac and Windows, this is one where it's pretty much purely based on UI. So the dialogue on Windows, somebody could work on that, and it just didn't have any shared code with what we have on Mac. So somebody had to pick it up and do all the same work on Mac. I have this one listed as an accessibility feature as well, because the current CF rules manager on Mac, and I'd have to look at Windows, but it's just not really good for keyboard accessibility. So if, for example, if you wanted to, and you can see the scroll bar on this one, there are actually more than 5 rules in my dialog at this time. And if I wanted to scroll down using the keyboard, it just doesn't work. You have to use a mouse. So it's not very accessible. So the improved one will not only be resizable, but it'll be fully keyboard accessible. So if you want to just throw your mouse away, you could do that. We'll be making the load to experience the same. So right now on Mac, the load, like when you create a query, even using the legacy queries, you have, kind of the traditional options to load into the current sheet or an existing, or a new sheet, and you pick the location, but it doesn't have all these options. So now we'll be able to load into basically the same options that you have on Windows when you create a new query. The one that's missing, unfortunately, I have crossed out there is the data model. So again, Power Pivot is not going to be supported on Mac, so data model is not going to be an option. And then, oops. I do want to share some things. So we kind of showing you what our list looks like. We have a whole list of features where we know there are more feature gaps. And one of the things we always take time to do is go through our feedback and go through the Excel feedback forum and look at what people are voting on, and try to say, well, what is the next thing we should do? And this list includes 15 or so things. And I'd love to hear opinions from any of you. If one of the things on here is really important, or if there are things missing from the list, or things that you think don't belong on the list, and I can take that back and we can use that input in our decision making.
Henry wants to know what the some other way is for Power Pivot.
Yeah, I think so. Some other way would be most likely some kind of cloud-based model. So I think one of the considerations is putting the data model somewhere up in the cloud, and you'd have a connection to it, but not actually having the data model running in Excel on the Mac. And part of the reason for that would be, not only getting it working on the Mac, but then that would open it up to be able to run on other platforms like the web.
Steve, do you have a survey for these options by any chance?
I don't know.
Okay. Donald has already voted. He says he wants 4 and 9. So
evaluate formula. And, okay.
I have to say, the day that I discovered that evaluate formula wasn't in the Mac was a shocking day. It's only been in Windows for like ever, right? So
yeah.
That was a horrible discovery.
Yeah.
But
so I can't really go into much about it, but we are working on a completely different way of evaluating your formula. So hopefully we'll have something. I don't know if it will be sometime this year or next year, but we're working on improving the whole formula authoring experience, and part of it will be a nicer way to evaluate the formula. So I don't think we'll be implementing the evaluate formula dialog on Mac, but hopefully we'll take care of number 4 in another way.
Cool. So anybody that is online with us right now, if you've got thoughts on this list of the things that you want to prioritize, drop it in the chat. Steve's going to have access to that even after the meeting's over. So I know Steve listens with all this stuff, and he's definitely curious on your feedback here. So please do throw in what you're looking there. Ron says number 12, compatibility checker. Will you point to the explicit location of the problem? Usually the checker says it's a problem somewhere, but we have to play hide and seek to figure out what it is. Yeah, that's an experience that could generally use improvement even in Windows.
Yeah.
But, sure.
Yeah, that's a good feedback, because we actually don't hear much feedback about that. So it's interesting to know that that's an important one to you. All right. So we can always come back to this if there are questions, because I think we still have some more time, but that is the end of my presentation. So
all right.
I'm happy to take any more questions or just discuss whatever you want to discuss.
Fair enough. Well, there's a question from Henry. Does the compatibility checker highlight issues between Mac and Windows? I'm not aware that it does on the Windows side.
No, I don't think it does.
think the two apps just pretend the other one doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
So, but that is an interesting ask, actually. I mean, I don't know, Steve. Do you have any numbers on what the percentage of the user base is on Excel that is on Excel for Mac versus Excel for Windows?
I don't know the exact number, but I would like estimate somewhere around 10%. Like it's pretty low.
The other question,
But that's just a rough guess based on some quick math I'm doing in my head. So the thing about the compatibility, there aren't many compatibility issues now. So back before 2018, there were a whole host of things. The biggest compatibility issue right now is that if you have a data model on your workbook and you open it up on Mac, you can open it up and you can see the pivot table as it is, but it's completely non-interactive and you can't get to the data model. You can't obviously edit anything in there. You can't reshape the pivot table or anything like that. So other than that, I mean, there may be some really obscure things, like if you set up sheet protection on Windows, you can set up a part of the range with a named user from your Windows domain that's able to unlock it without using a password. That doesn't exist on Mac, but I think you'd still open up the file and you should be able to work with it. So I think the number of things where it's like a true incompatibility is super low at this point.
And you guys track all that stuff as well. I mean, and like I say, I mean, trying to knock those things off. Steve, I'm kind of curious, just from a general perspective, like what's the size of the team that works on Excel for Mac versus the size for Windows? Are you allowed to share that, or?
Well, it's more so right now. There are certainly experts that focus on the Mac, and we have people working on building filling in the feature gaps. But what we've tried to do since 2018, when we merged the code bases, is make everyone is just an Excel engineer now. So we do have people that focus on platforms for sure. But when we talk about Windows and Mac, I guess a better way of saying it is you're a desktop, like an Excel desktop engineer, perhaps. And if you're building a feature for the desktop, new features should be on Mac and Windows basically around the same time. For the number of people that focus like on doing these feature gaps and the things that are unique to Mac, like making it compatible with the new versions of the OS, doing the perf improvements that are specific to Mac, things like that. It's just a small fraction of the overall Excel team. So yeah, I don't think I'm supposed to say the actual numbers, but it's not a huge team. I can say
Fair enough. That. So I was curious. I mean, this is why, I mean, like you guys are chipping away at that gap, but it's not like gone, right? So,
right.
So there you go.
And it's interesting because before I came to Microsoft, I worked at a little startup company, and we worked on obviously we had an Excel add-in and we worked with SharePoint, and I just assumed Microsoft is this huge company with unlimited resources and they'll fix any bug that comes up and be able to build anything that's needed, but there are resource constraints everywhere. So
yeah, I don't think I had that impression. Every time I ask you guys to fix a bug, I figure out that that's not the case.
Yeah.
So, not every time. That's not fair. You guys do a phenomenal job of actually fixing a lot of things, but there's definitely a few things out there that just don't, well, like you say, it's time and resources. So, yeah. Questions from the audience. Please, feel free to fire things in here. I mean, we've got Steve, and he'd love to answer your questions. Ron's got it'd be really nice of Microsoft in general provided more feedback to user submitted feedback. Actually, so this is an interesting time to be asking this question, Ron, because one of the other things that Steve does is Steve actually looks after the feedback for a lot of this, is on the team that addresses a lot of that. So most people feel that the feedback is a black hole. We submit suggestions, have no idea what happens to it. Did someone look at it? Is it going to be acted on this year, next year? Never, and whatnot.
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's interesting, actually. So because Mac has a much smaller user base than Windows, I've been working on it for 4 years, and we actually look at almost 100% of the feedback that comes in for Mac. So we have a team I look at a little bit of it, but then we have an engineer who spends a lot of time looking at that every day. And then we have some vendors who go through, because a lot of the feedback is just not actionable and it doesn't warrant a response. but we look at all of it so that we know if there's all of a sudden a whole bunch of people complaining about the same thing, we know like, oh, there must be something wrong here, and we'll investigate it and make sure we find out like why are all these people complaining about whatever it is on a certain date. But yeah, it doesn't go into a black hole. We do have, based on the volume of feedback we get, like for Windows especially, we have filters that really help us filter down and find the feedback that is the most actionable. And when I say actionable, I mean help us find generally new bugs that we've introduced. So we have filters like if someone uses certain words that indicate like, since the last update, this broke, those will pop up to the top. And if there's feedback that where people include their email address and a screenshot and a pretty good description of the problem, we have filters that help us find the feedback that has the best description and the most information along with it. Because if someone's complaining that there's a bug, if they just say filters don't work and there's no screenshot and there's no way to contact them, it's really not actionable and we can't do anything about it. But if they give us a big description about when I click the filter, I'm expecting this to happen, but this happens, and this screenshot explains it, and by the way, you can contact me, and they put their email address, that one is going to get reviewed because it has all the information and a good description. So hopefully those ones, if we need to get back to somebody, then we will, and we'll get more information. Unfortunately, there's just so much volume that we're not going to respond back to everybody. We are making improvements though. So in the past, I can tell you the history of the way we collect feedback. So about 4 years ago, you would send in feedback and it was coming in, and we actually downloaded it from whatever system collected it, and we had it in spreadsheets and we categorized it, and the whole team would sit together and we'd look through different parts of the feedback based on what feature area it was involved in. We've evolved to now have a really great system that takes all the feedback from all the different apps, and it's all in one system. It has great filtering and reporting capability, and it has the ability for us to categorize and tag things and link it to our bug database and send out automatic responses to the person who submitted it. And then the next iteration of that is that, and actually you can see this today, if you're signed in when you submit feedback, you can actually go to the Microsoft Feedback Portal, which you can get to by the link that you see on the screen there. And if you're signed into that portal, you can click your name and there's a place where you can go in and see my feedback. And you'd actually see feedback that you submitted. And if we tagged a bug to it, or what we call an issue, and that issue got resolved, we can actually post a public update and you would see the update and what we did with it in your My Feedback page. So, excuse me, it's not kind of fully in use today, but we're going to be using that more and more as we go forward. So I, encourage you to, when you send feedback, go and look at that My Feedback page.
So just a quick comment I want to sort of append on this one, Steve. Ron's asked, don't you get our contact information embedded in the feedback? And I think there's a couple of things that we got to sort of tease out with this one really quickly. Is where did you submit the feedback? If you're using the send a smile, send a frown, or send feedback that's right in the app, unless you actually have a checkbox that says yes, include my email, no, it does not go. Microsoft gets nothing unless you explicitly opt into them. Or into it. And I know that I actually just recently had to go in and find the option in my Office 365 tenant to enable the feature for me to actually check the box to say, yes, I want them to know who I am. So just keep that in mind, is that unless your tenant admin has opted you in, then most likely, no, they don't know. They get redacted stuff that isn't identifiable, and that's one of the things that's important out there. So I don't know about the Excel forums. I mean, presumably you're logging in, so there must be something that's tied to it there. But I know.
Yeah. So the way it works on the Excel forum, if you can just go and browse there and look at things without signing in, but as soon as you want to put a comment or make a suggestion or vote, you have to sign in. So then, in that case, our responses would just go to the forum. It wouldn't be emailed to you because we don't get your email just through that. But if you went into the forum and you had a suggestion, we commented on it, you'd see that right there. Or if you went to that My Feedback area, you could see feedback that you sent from within the app, assuming that you're signed into the app with the same ID that you're signed into the forum. So That's kind of where the future is going. So what Ken mentioned about the email address is correct. Like if the email field is available for you and you see it when you submit feedback, you can check the box. If it's not there, then your administrator hasn't enabled that. So a lot of times we do see where people will write their email address or even a phone number into their comment, but our system automatically strips that out because there's a lot of privacy restrictions on all this data. So it's really hard for, like, if I go into the system, like I can go and look at data, but I can't take it out of there and share it and all that. So it's really controlled so that if you, for example, want to have all your data deleted, you can put in a request of your data deleted. And I'm not sure how you put in that request, but you can do that. And then our system will be able to delete it based on your user ID. But a lot of the information is just not available to like me as someone working on Excel. I can go and see some of the data, but I can't see all of it. And certainly, like if you type an email address into the comment field, it gets stripped out and I can't see it. So.
Steve, I had no idea that the feedback I sent through apps got posted into my feedback panel.
Yeah, as long as you're signed in.
I'm very vocal in there. How about that? So, hey, Steve, I noticed that Donald's had his hand raised for quite a long time. So, Donald, did you have a question you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, earlier in the briefing, you mentioned a new database driver for the SQL Server for the Mac. Is that out in release now, general release?
Yes.
Okay, I'll have my user check because we turned on multi-factor authentication a month or so ago, and after that, I had one user that was downloading the table and it didn't work, or it didn't seem like there was an option. It was like Kerberos and something else. So I'll have her give that a try, take a look tomorrow, and see if that might have fixed that problem for her. Yeah,
so I think, from the user side, they shouldn't notice any difference, but underneath the covers, it is different. So for multi-factor, I don't think there's anything special that would show up in the app.
Okay. All right. We'll take a look at it.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. I see Ron says it would be nice to add an email component to our replies and status updates. So if we do respond, we use the system that we have internally to send a response so that, like, I can send a response and one of my colleagues can go in there and look at the feedback and he can see how I responded and maybe make their own response. So the email address that you'll see is just some generic thing. I think that's where you're getting. If there's something on the feedback portal, then, like, if I'm the one who goes in and sets a status of, like, if somebody has a request, let's say for the name manager, that was a request we had on there, and I hope I went in and said that it's now complete. That'll show up and actually be from me, but it's not something that would get sent to your email box.
I can certainly say though, Steve, I know that I've submitted stuff through the feedback in app and checked the box to include my email address, and I've definitely had replies from the product teams on different things, and granted, I do have the ability or the advantage that you guys do know who I am. But the reality is, the best way to get a response or feedback from the team that I've found is if you submit a very, very detailed listing that is reproducible of what happened. At that point, I'll get an email back saying, "Listen, hey, we thanks for submitting this, but can we get some more details out of you on this and this?" But it really comes down to is what Steve mentioned before about giving them something that's actionable, right? If the thing is, I don't like the way this works, there's really nothing they can do with it. If it's something that says, I'm seeing a crash that happens when I do this and this and this and this, and yes, I'm going to submit my logs and include my email, that's got a much, much higher chance of getting a response back from the team because, they know that they've got somebody who's paid attention and is trying to actually get them reproducible steps and things like that. So for what it's worth.
Okay. And I see Ron added a more to that. Now I kind of understand what he's after. So as we evolve the system that with this feedback hub where you can go in and see my feedback, there is a plan in the future to enable you to say, I want to be notified by email anytime a status updates on something that I've submitted. So it's not there today, but hopefully in the not too distant future, you'll be able to go in there and say that you want to get that, and then you won't have to go checking in the feedback portal. You'll get a notification, and then you'll know to go look for it. Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
All right. Are there any other questions before we shut things down and let Steve get back to his day? I'll give it a couple seconds. Steve, a big thanks for coming and doing this. I really appreciate it. I very much appreciate the fact that you actually share your future plans with the group here as well. That's cool stuff, and we really enjoy it, especially when we get a hat tip as to what potentially is coming that you can share. Can't say enough thanks for that. So I see Jeff is
I'm happy to do it.
Great session. There you go. Awesome. Well, again, big thanks for coming. I think we'll set the meetup down for now, but thanks everyone for participating. If you do have some thoughts on some of the things that you want to see, feel free to drop them in the chat. Ron's asking if we can share the 15 to 20 point upcoming list with others. Well, for what it's worth, it's recorded in the video, so it's going to be posted to YouTube. So Steve's already shared it.
They're all things. Generally, you can discover that those are gaps between between Mac and Windows at this point. So it's not really a secret. Anything where we give a hint about our plan, I think it's fine, because I think we've hinted about that already in some public forums, so it should be fine.
One thing I'd love from that, Steve, is if you happen to have an Excel survey or form survey that actually allowed people to rank them that I could share on the bottom of the video when we post it, would be brilliant, because then we could actually collect feedback longer term for you. So
okay, yeah, I could set that up.
Awesome, cool stuff. Great. Well, thank you very much for coming. We'll end it off for this time. I'll get the video posted up within the next 48 hours, folks, and hopefully we'll see you at the next meetup.